how will the children suffer from a breakup of your marriage?
Yeah, those are
You need to really,
good.
because it would be a disaster scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a product of a broken home. My father cheated on my mother, and they were divorced. There was a disaster after that. And so you need to think about the kids as well.
You're listening to Healing Broken Trust podcast with Brad and Morgan Robinson, where we talk about healing from affairs, infidelity, trust, and cheating in your relationship from the perspective of a professional marriage therapist and affair recovery expert. If you're wanting to heal your marriage, this podcast is for you. And we're officially on episode number 12, and we're talking about should I stay or should I go? And that's a really important question because people really struggle with that. Should I stay? Should I go? Should I work on this? Should I not? Is it going to work? Can we fix this? So we're going to talk about this in episode 12. And I want to encourage you to go over to healingbrokentrust.com/episode 12. That's healingbrokentrust.com/episode and the number 12. And download those free resources so that you can get some help, really. We want to help you through this process, and it's a great way to expedite healing and to help you through this process. So go to healingbrokentrust.com/episode 12, and let's get started.
You're listening to How to Recover from an Affair with Brad and Morgan Robinson. I'm Brad Robinson.
And I'm Morgan Robinson, and today we're talking about handling the ambiguous feelings and questions about staying or leaving after infidelity in the relationship. This is a very important topic, and basically the emotional storm that occurs after betrayed spouses find out about the affair causes a very intense emotional disorientation. And we strongly recommend that couples wait 6 to 12 weeks after discovering the affair before they decide that they're completely done with their mate. One of the common feelings after learning about an affair is shock. After that period, reality begins to set in. Allowing plenty of time to make the decision ensures that the decision will be easier to live with. Right, Brad?
Yeah, and Morgan, that's why we ask for couples and individuals who've been affected by this to really give themselves 6 to 12 weeks before they decide they're done.
Right.
And, Morgan, there's a couple that I've worked with and they've been married for 20 years. The wife had an emotional affair with a boyfriend that she met from high school. This was somebody that she met on Facebook. And for this couple, and almost all couples after an affair, there's this period of questioning if they want to stay married or divorce. Mm-hmm. And that period can take several days or several months.
Interesting.
And it can make it harder to heal when you're stuck in this place of uncertainty. Do I want to be here or not?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important because the longer somebody's uncertain about wanting to stay or heal, it's harder for them to be a supporter and a nurturer for their spouse.
Right.
Because they're still stuck on themselves.
Right.
They haven't made the full commitment, recommitment back into the marriage. And so the spouse who's been betrayed is really wavering.
Right, back and forth, right.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, emotions are all over the map. They're emotions like anger, guilt, disgust, shame, humiliation, and fear. Because emotions are heightened and will eventually subside, our advice is to not make any major life decisions right now, while the ability to think clearly and rationalize is compromised, including the decision to leave. Most people who decide to leave after an affair without trying to work things out first will usually later regret not trying to sort through the mess.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're right, Morgan. Because they regret not trying the effort. Mm-hmm. It's the what if we could have made it.
Right.
I'll never know. So you want to, I'm in favor of trying to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to consider, too, if you're not willing to at least heal from what happened, a lot of times you bring that baggage into the next relationship. If you do decide to get remarried again,
yeah, you can.
You really don't, if you haven't worked through those problems, you can really cause more problems in the next relationship. But those who do try to work on the marriage, and if they later divorce, rarely regret trying to work on the marriage. They don't regret it. A lot of times because of what I just said, you are healing as a person, as an individual, as well as the relationship.
They find staying and trying to work on the marriage brought them closure and helped them have peace of mind about leaving.
Exactly.
And so, Morgan, my advice to couples is to make the effort to work this out while they have the opportunity instead of facing regret in the future. And several months ago, I had worked with a couple who'd been married for 10 years. The husband was a high-level executive in his company who did a lot of traveling. His wife was suspicious, discovered the affair. He initially lied about the affair, blowing it off as just a friend. When they came to see me, they both were debating about whether to continue the marriage or end it. My advice to them is the same advice I'm giving to our listeners. He wanted to try to make it work, and he followed my advice very well. But she felt like she would be better off without him, and let him know she didn't want to continue the marriage. That was the last I saw of them. And this is a woman who felt like God was telling her, you need to leave him because I'm going to give you a ministry to help other women who've experienced this. Well, how come she couldn't have a ministry that was one where they reconciled?
Right, and there was healing involved.
And healing, and not just, well, I'm going to be done.
Right.
Because I don't financially need you. So the wife later called her office and said that her husband had left her for the other woman.
Right, I spoke with her that day, I remember.
Yeah, well, but that isn't what happened at all. He wanted to try to fix the marriage and repair it. Because of the strong emotions associated with this, she decided she was done without really trying to salvage what was left of their marriage. When she called, she was filled with regret because she didn't take the time to make a well-thought-out decision that she could live with.
Yeah, that was a really sad day. I remember that. So like this client, the initial reaction of many people is to say the marriage is over after, affair is discovered. But calling it quits is, that's a bit premature and short-sighted in a lot of ways, And most people do work it out. But putting effort into saving the marriage and being a loving, supportive partner can really help spouses feel like they gave their marriage the best chance they could. And once they start seeing improvement and feeling like their marriage is moving ahead in a positive way, their commitment will likely increase. So that's, a lot of people just can't see the forest from the trees in the beginning.
Yeah. And Morgan, and this is really important for those of you listening, when you are discussing the future of the marriage, if you're spending time talking with friends, you want to talk to friends and family who are friends of the marriage.
Right.
And by that term, I mean people who are pro-marriage, who are objective, who realize there's two sides to every story.
Right.
It's really funny if you listen to somebody. We had this happen recently with us where somebody was talking to, and it's not even about a relationship issue as a couple. It was just somebody, we knew both of them, and they were talking to us about a work situation they were in. And one person was talking to us about it and made the other person sound horrible. And then you hear the other person talk about it. You get more of a well-rounded picture of the whole thing. There's two sides to every story. And you need to if you're going to talk to anybody, you want to talk to people who know that. There's two sides to every story, who have a well-rounded perspective on things.
Right, and they're pro your relationship and pro-marriage.
Yeah, they're pro-marriage, and they want to see you guys work out. And so, unfortunately, though, few people understand how affairs work and how they occur and how to heal from one. And so friends and family members can express strong reactions and opinions about what the couple should do with the affair. So they're going to really let you know. And so those reactions can affect your decision-making. But we encourage you to remember that you are the only one who's going to live with the outcome of this decision. And therefore, the decision is yours alone.
Exactly. And during this 6 to 12 week period of ambiguity where you're not sure, should you stay, should you go, what should you do, another helpful step is to read as much as you can about affairs and the process, listen to our recordings, and read and learn about how to heal from an affair. You never know what one idea or key piece of information will impact your perspective. Yeah. So keep that in mind.
That's good advice, Morgan. Now, I want to give our listeners some different questions that they need to work through and ask themselves. And so as you're listening to this, you may want to pull out a pad of paper and a pen, write these down, think on paper.
Right.
And
try not to be driving at the moment.
Yeah, and you can re-listen to this over and over again and just try to sort this out. The clearer this is, the better this decision you'll be able to work with and live with. And so here's something that you need to consider and questions you need to ask yourself. You really want to see the future. You want to speculate what the future will be like for you without your spouse. So what will life be like without this person? What's going to happen in the immediate future? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, without this person in my life. So look down the road as far as you can and speculate what it would be like without your spouse.
How would your life be different?
How would your children's lives be different?
How would your current friendships be different?
How would you manage family events separately?
How would the following be different for you in the future? How would having fun be different? How would religion or spiritual connections be different? How would activities, interests, or hobbies you share, how would that be different, right? Personal goals and dreams, what would change about those? How would those be different?
Mm-hmm. And you also want to look at the past. You don't want to let current emotions keep you from seeing your past objectively. And what can happen is when things are a little bit more negative, 51% negative, people will rewrite their relationship history,
right,
and see it more negative.
Kind of through these negative sunglasses.
Yeah, these negative glasses. And so you need to ask yourself, what do you remember about the good times you shared with your partner?
What would you miss about your marriage?
What do you value about you and your partner as a couple?
What is your marriage like at its best and at its worst?
What particular qualities of your partner do you value?
What positive qualities does your partner bring out in you?
Have you and your spouse struggled together to get to this place in your life?
What are the qualities you don't care for in your partner and about the marriage? What did you contribute? And what ways did you two work as a team or not work as a team?
What negative impact does divorcing have on your spouse? What negative impact does divorce have on you? What negative impact does divorce have on your family, on your work, on your friends, etc.?
Right, and what, putting your hurt aside, trying to set that aside for a moment, what are the reasons for staying with your spouse?
Look past the affair. Do you love your spouse? And again, it's normal to not like or even despise the person after they've had an affair.
Right.
But do you love your spouse?
Right, at a fundamental level. Do you like your spouse as a person, even before the affair? Did you like your spouse? When did you like your spouse the most? Try to reimagine your wedding day. Try to go back to that place when you were really the closest.
Are you and your spouse somewhat compatible?
Exactly. And the fourth one, are you willing to work on the marriage? Are you willing to work on it?
And are you willing to work towards forgiveness for what may have been done to injure your spouse?
Are you willing to understand what vulnerabilities may have been present for an affair to even happen, right?
Yeah, and Morgan, something that's really important with this is, we're talking about compatibility. Do you love them? Many people will say, I love them, but I'm not in love with them. And what you need to understand, if that's how you feel, is an affair is a tremendous opportunity for growth. Sure, there's a lot of remorse, pain, shame, chaos, but it's a tremendous opportunity for growth. You are working on marriage number 2. You are in round 2 of your marriage. You're working on this, and you can rebuild it.
Right.
Marriage number 1 is dead. And so you guys have a say in both of you rebuilding this from the ground up, changing things.
Right. And
that's important. So it's not like, okay, I don't love this person, now I got to go back to him.
Right.
You can change how you feel towards this person.
Right, by the choices that you make.
Yeah, you can regain your feelings for them. If you are the one who had the affair or if you're the one who's been betrayed.
Right.
And so that's really important to understand that.
Yeah, don't let temporary and present emotion keep you from working on this, because romance can be rebuilt. Questions for the injured spouse to ask. Here are some questions for the injured spouse. The first one is, ask yourself whether this affair is part of something larger, such as a pattern of lying and cheating in your spouse, right?
That's important to look at the larger pattern. Is this what kind of pattern is here?
Exactly.
Have they cheated before?
Right. Can you trust your spouse to tell you the truth about other things?
Can you depend on and trust your spouse for other things?
Exactly.
Does your spouse understand your pain from this?
Right. They may not initially be understanding, but feel like you're overreacting possibly. But if they are listening to this and they're listening to what we have to say and they're reading about it, they'll start to understand better the trauma and the emotions surrounding an affair. But is your spouse willing to help you heal and move forward, right?
Is your spouse willing to be part of the solution in moving the marriage forward?
Is your spouse genuinely remorseful for the affair?
Is your spouse willing to learn from this and implement what he or she is learning?
Right. And the next one is your spouse willing to acknowledge attractions to the opposite sex as normal and willing to discuss these temptations in the future?
That's important.
That's very important, being honest and open.
Yeah. Is your spouse willing to make a commitment to honesty about everything pertaining to your relationship?
Right.
Does that even seem reasonable to you, them being completely honest about everything pertaining to the relationship?
Right, and something to think about is that changes like these don't happen overnight, but is there a general movement in this direction for the previous questions 2 through 8? Are they trying? Are they moving in that direction?
If you were to split for good, describe the disaster scenario that could follow. How will the children suffer from a breakup of your marriage?
Yeah, those are
you need to really,
good.
because it would be a disaster scenario. And I'm a product of a broken home. My father cheated on my mother, and they were divorced. There was a disaster after that. And so you need to think about the kids as well.
So if you ever wondered why Brad got into this field, now you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were talking about questions for the injured spouse to ask, and now we've got questions for the involved spouse to ask.
The spouse
right?
who had the affair. These are questions that you need to ask yourself. And when you're deciding if you should stay or go, it's important to understand that you do not want to make a decision because you are comparing an exciting, illicit, passionate affair with a stable relationship.
Right, and one thing we talk about too is that you can bring that passion and excitement into your marriage once it's healed.
Yeah,
right?
you can. You can create intimacy.
True.
It's kind of like comparing, well, do I want to live in... You can't live in Disney World.
Right.
You just can't. You can go visit it, but you can't live in it.
Right.
And sometimes that's what people want to do, is they want to bring Disney World home with them and have their whole world be Disney World.
Right.
Their whole life be Disney World. And that's what you're doing when you're comparing a normal relationship, your normal marriage, this
to a fantasy,
to reality, to fantasy.
Exactly.
You're off in fantasy world, fantasy land.
Right, and only 3% of people who do marry their affair partner are able to have a long-term marriage. That's a small percentage, 3%.
It's a very small percentage of people who do marry their affair partner that's able to have a long-term marriage.
Right.
And the reason for that is because they struggle to trust each other. The affair partner won't be able to trust them because you left your marriage.
You left your marriage. Why not do it
You're
again?
pledging to remain faithful. When you showed that person you could not be faithful, and you're not going to be able to trust them.
Right.
And you're leaving them because there's these illicit, passionate, romantic feelings that don't last.
Right.
That's
They're
not
not real.
normal. They subside.
Right, and a cornerstone of a relationship, a solid marriage, is trust.
It's trust.
Right.
It's dependability.
Right.
But those feelings are fleeting. They're there to help you attach to a person. They're not there to build a relationship. In fact, most people who do marry never experience that kind of relationship.
Wow.
They experience more of a companionship type relationship. They don't experience this
fantasy,
fairy tale type thing.
Barbie's dream house.
Yeah, they don't experience that.
Exactly.
And so, basically, questions you need to ask if you've had the affair, if you need to stay or go. Here's the first question you need to ask. You need to see yourself married or in a long-term relationship with the affair partner. Picture yourself married or in a long-term relationship with this person and ask yourself, what would the future look like for you as a couple 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Right.
And you need to look at this, Morgan, without the feelings being there, the passionate feelings, because they're not going to be there.
Right.
What other characteristics does this person have?
Right.
What negative characteristics do they have?
Right. You're going to have bills, you're going to have the mortgage, you're going to have children possibly, you're going to have all of those stressors.
Yeah.
What would that be like?
Morgan, and I want to emphasize this because typically people do not look at the negative in a person when they're having an exciting, illicit, passionate affair.
Secret, right? Affair.
When they're obsessed with a person, they're not looking at their negative qualities.
Exactly.
They're not even conscious of them.
Right. So the next question would be, does he or she want to have children? If he or she already has children, does he or she want to start a new family in the future? Do your life dreams add up? Do they match up? What you want, do they want?
Yeah, do they want children?
That's one.
How difficult would it be for you and your affair partner to raise each other's kids together?
Right. Blended families, they have their own challenges. They do. How would your children handle and incorporate into their family the person who broke up their family?
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you need to consider how that's going to impact.
Right.
So how would your children handle and incorporate
Could they respect that person?
That person as a step-parent.
Exactly.
That's going to be, And we've known people like that personally outside of counseling who've experienced that. So what were the things that you found attractive about the affair partner? If these traits were to become magnified, would you still find them desirable?
Right.
For example, if you like how your affair partner is always a social butterfly, imagine what it would be like to be with someone who is always flirting.
Exactly.
So you need to ask yourself, would these qualities be magnified that you like? And you need to also look at their negative qualities and ask yourself, what if these became magnified?
Right. Considering living with that.
Yeah, because it will. Because, like we mentioned earlier, Morgan, like you said earlier, you wear these glasses of romantic love, of obsessive love, where you feel addicted to this person, infatuated with this person. You don't see their negative qualities.
Right.
Their average qualities are even heightened.
Right.
And all you see is this good stuff. And so...
Right, and the second one that we want to talk about is, what will it be like when the fantasy or infatuation of an illicit affair wears off 10 years from now? What would it be like after that? Like you were saying, magnifying these common traits that you're seeing as positive now. How could they be switched or flipped?
Would you divorce your spouse even if the relationship with the affair partner doesn't work out?
Think about the future 10 to 20 years from now. Where do you want to be living? How do you want to spend your time? What activities give you pleasure? What makes you happy right now and in the past? And how will that affect your future?
What happens to the dreams of growing old together with your spouse? What did you plan on you two doing during that time? What did you plan on this retirement period? What happened to those dreams that you had with your spouse?
Right. If you were to end your marriage for good, describe the disaster scenario that could follow. What would it look like? With your kids, with your feelings, with your finances. What would happen? What would it look like? Yeah,
and you also need to give yourself an honest assessment of how the children would suffer from the disillusion of your marriage. And Morgan, I just want to state my opinion about this. I would never leave my spouse to be with a fair partner.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, not just you, but I'm saying for our listeners, knowing what I know, I would never, if I were in that situation, I would never leave to go be with that other person because it doesn't work. The people I've worked with who've met because of an affair, they're the hardest couples to work with. They don't trust each other.
Right.
It's like constant fighting and bickering. It's very difficult. They don't have the fundamental foundation of security and trust that you need to have to make a relationship grow.
Exactly.
They're lacking it.
Right.
And they don't last long.
Right.
They just don't. And they're a pain in the butt to work with.
They built their house on sand.
Yeah. And so, what you need to know is, and this is something else people need to realize, Morgan, is that being securely connected with your mate, it's the best protection and form of healing after an affair.
Absolutely.
And
research shows that. Yeah,
that's from research. But so being connected emotionally, it helps you heal from an affair. And it can help you, being connected emotionally, even during this uncertain times of uncertainty, can help you heal. And if your spouse is leaning out of the marriage, you may want to listen to what we did on the show that we did on how to manage that time if your spouse is wanting to leave. Things that you need to be aware of, and things that you can do to help
stop your divorce.
Yeah. And let me say this though too: people who get caught up in a limerent affair, which we've talked about as well, they can complicate how the betrayer feels about ending the affair. obviously this can make it a difficult period of uncertainty about the future of the marriage. So go look at our information on limerence and limerent affairs,
Right.
because that can also affect your ability to recover from an affair.
Right, and to look at things objectively.
Yeah, look at things objectively and know if you want to stay or go. And many times the betrayer, if they're caught up in limerence, they're very stuck in determining if they want to stay or go.
More so than any other type of affair.
Yeah, they're very wishy-washy. I don't know if I want to be here. I don't know if I want to stay or go. Sometimes they'll leave. They'll come back. And so you need to look at our information that we've developed on limerence and limerent affairs.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to How to Recover from an Affair. I'm Brad Robinson.
And I'm Morgan Robinson. You have a wonderful week. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Healing Broken Trust. If you like this episode, you can always get our show notes and more details and links to the resources we discussed at healingbrokentrust.com. Also, as long as you're online, head on over to healingbrokentrust.com/retreat for details on an upcoming one-on-one retreat with me. If you like us, please subscribe and leave a review for us on iTunes. As always, everything discussed on this podcast is either my opinion or Morgan's opinion and is not to be taken as relationship advice because I'm not your therapist, nor have I considered your personal situation as your therapist. This podcast is for your entertainment and education only, and I really do hope you've enjoyed it. See you until next time.